Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Cube Pod, episode 101. Dave, we got back. We missed a week. Salute to you. Get the
Hey,
salute.
John. How you doing?
The I feel like we got to go like a 2x speed today because just all the action on the events past 2 weeks. Events are in full swing, and back to like the highest levels I can imagine. And since we've been doing the Cube, last week we had Click, this week Click, Boomi World, NYSE, Oracle, AWS at New York City Financial Service, Cerebras Supernova, Tech Summit in San Francisco, IBM Think, Nutanix Next, ServiceNow, FICO World, SaaS Innovate, Oracle, and then a special Broadcom launch coming up. We had a preview under NDA, can't talk about it, but it's massive for Broadcom. They announced their earnings in first week of June, I believe, and the AI factory and the AI clustered systems are hot. So great discussion to go through all that. I got a lot to share with you about NVIDIA versus Broadcom. I got a lot of perspective on it. Been doing a ton of research on this, Dave. So maybe get to that later. But the big news this week, besides all the action in AI, is that the tech execs all traveled out with Trump to the Middle
You
East.
mean you mean
Yeah.
Emir Trump?
Tech execs go to the Middle East to pimp for cash. Is my
Yeah.
headline. I had to probably not going to get approved by Rob, but power is money. Money is power. Energy is power. Energy is money. They got the oil. They're going to have a lot of sovereignty out there. I mean, so many storylines on this trip, Dave. Sovereignty, oil, data is the next oil. Yeah, the energy needed to run data centers. Also, just the opening of more chips and the cash coming in to the U.S., the global geopolitical scene, just the stability, the war with Tim Cook and Apple over India with Trump. But what got me was Andy Jassy was there, Jensen Huang was there, all the top execs were there.
G2 was there.
G2, who got promoted to president, our friend G2 Patel at Cisco, who runs the head of product, is now president. Big news there from Chuck Robbins. Just a lot of action happening in the Cube universe, Dave. Just the universe is just really smoking hot in the Cube. I got to say, I am actually excited to see the tech execs out there, and they're definitely posturing. That's where the money is. It's lining up, drink from the trough, as they say in the tech world. But there is some serious business out there. And NVIDIA, OpenAI announced a massive factory out there, out in the Middle East. That's huge news. They're going to be OpenAI is expected to be the primary anchor tenant for 5 gigawatt data centers, which could be one of the largest in the world. So I think there's a bigger picture going on here. I had a big chat about this with Bill Tai yesterday in San Francisco at the SF Tech Summit at the NYSE and Cerebras Supernova. I think it's going to be a land grab. Who can get the power? 5 gigawatts is massive. There's not a lot of power, but Dave, this is a geopolitical, multi-threaded monster story.
Well,
What's your read? I mean, obviously,
so,
the hot takes out of the gate, which is obviously Trump being there, but the tech scene lining up to drink from the trough.
yeah, I mean, my take is definitely positive. I mean, a lot of times these things are just headlines and they don't turn into, real dollars. But I think there's more meat on the bone here. The first thing is, I'm really happy that they're at least sort of trying to clear up the AI diffusion laws, at least in Saudi and UAE for now. They're going to do it country by country, but you had those tier two, that fat middle, India, Saudi, Switzerland, et cetera. And so that will add some clarity on a country by country basis. Like, hey, do deals with us and you'll get GPUs. And so this is, I think, good news for compute availability. It's not just about compute in the region, because I think a lot of U.S. hyperscalers and cloud service providers, the hyperscalers, Oracle, OpenAI, Microsoft, that's AWS, et cetera, are going to get access to GPUs. There's also direct U.S. investment. This offsets some of the tariff concerns. To your point about energy, the Middle East has a lot of energy. Bring the GPUs there, and it's great news for the region. I think it's great news for NVIDIA because it offsets some of those concerns that we saw. You saw the stock go up this week. I think it's good news for AMD. Didn't really see much intel in there. There's an MOU for Qualcomm. I'm not sure what that's all about. I think it's a negative for China, Iran, and Russia. I think there are risks here. I think the risk is Chinese companies can still get access to the GPUs, but and there could be leakage of model weights. Remember, when you train these models, they boil down to just terabytes, and once they're trained, and they can be stolen. But I think the cash offsets that, and it's a big positive in my view for the industry and for the U.S.
Yeah, I think it's a great competitive opportunity for the U.S. And I think, to me, again, there are going to be major winners in this. The arms dealers like NVIDIA and Broadcom, those are the suppliers. There's a tons of kind of core pieces to the puzzle. NVIDIA and Broadcom obviously win. Then the picks and shovels, all the AI ecosystems will win. This is a build out mode. If you look at the CapEx spending from the hyperscalers that we've been covering at length, this regional sovereign monster cloud like or data center environments will be AI backbones basically. So if that's the case, everything that goes around the stuff we've been covering, like all the trend in co-packaged optics, for instance, right? And AI factory components that make these big clustered systems work, storage, everything around the clustered systems, data center infrastructure, cloud infrastructure around AI is going to be constantly being built up. That's just fact. If you look at just in the US, Texas, Arizona, major fabs going up there, major centers of data centers going in there for AI. You factor in the Middle East and India and what that does for the region. India and China will be impacted. Obviously, Apple announced they're going to be doing some stuff in India. Trump kind of trying to strong arm Tim Cook to pull that out. He's staying there. So you're seeing that region is a whole nother build out. So we are in a massive AI build out, global build out system. And I just think it's great news for the industry. I think, I'm not a political person in terms of understanding all the policy and geopolitical things, but it makes sense to me that if there could be peace through money, and that's essentially what Trump's saying. If you read through his tea leaves, he's just like the art of the deal guy, as they say. But what he's really doing is saying, hey, let's make money, not war, right? So there's a little bit of posturing, but if that could actually get traction, that would align with the tech industry, the good side of the tech industry, which is building out all the next level capabilities, which includes all the things around AI privacy, AI safety, AI governance. But if you look at outside the United States, the hottest trend that we're seeing is in cloud is sovereign cloud. Okay,
Yeah.
so that definitely connects the dots for me. And again, I look at the competitiveness of NVIDIA versus Broadcom, rising tide. This is a rising tsunami for them. I mean, this is not even close to like even a debate on who wins here. So I think that
Yeah.
the USA has a competitive advantage with AI, and the tariffs kind of screw that up, and which is why Wall Street's kind of like going crazy. And I think this will hopefully get people lined up, and then you'll start to see the tech stack start to get some solidarity around how do we organize around scale. And I did a talk this week with Rob Thomas at IBM at NYSE's Tech Summit in San Francisco, hosted a panel, and the big conversation is that even in the tech stacks there's still no, outside of Kubernetes, there is no kind of like neutral de facto thing that people can gather around to organize around to scale. So
Mhm.
there's still some challenges in AI just in general, outside the fact that Anthropic's getting more cash than you can read about, Perplexity's raising more money, Databricks is just can demand anything from Wall Street they want. I mean, if you're an AI leader right now, you are swimming in cash. And I don't think that slows down at all. I mean, I think it's going to get much bigger. And again, I'm doing a real big piece on, the GPU and XPUs, and it's going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out.
So so digging into this, I mean, the numbers are mind-boggling, and I'm no expert on Middle East, like you say, geopolitics and data center. But so my understanding is that Abu Dhabi's AI company, G42, is, like you said they're going to be building out a 5 gigawatt data center campus.
Hmm.
Um, and they're getting an allocation of 500,000, a GPU quota of 500,000 GPUs. And now 20% of that is going for the UAE, and the rest is for US companies, the hyperscalers and Oracle. So that's UAE. And I don't know what the number, I've heard numbers of like 200 billion, but I'm not sure on that one. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is doing 600 billion is the number there. And the big data center builder in the kingdom is DataVault, and they're going to invest $20 billion in U.S. data centers. I presume Texas is going to be part of that. And then U.S. companies led by Oracle, I think 14 billion, but Google, Salesforce, AMD, Uber are going to fund Saudi projects. And then Humane, which is the new Saudi AI firm, is building a 500 megawatt AMD data center and 500 megawatt NVIDIA center with GB300s over the next 5 years. And then, like I say, Qualcomm is in there. It's some MOU with Qualcomm that I didn't really fully understand, but it's a big deal, and I think it is real. At least some of it. Even if it cut it in half, it's still a big deal.
The Amazon deal, the $5 billion kind of deal that Amazon's talking about with Humane, creating an AI zone, is not new to Amazon. Remember, the Cube, for the folks listening know about the Cube, is we've been in Bahrain twice.
Yeah.
For Amazon has a region, and I think they launched that in 2017 was the first year. We were there covering it with Teresa Carlson when she was at the helm there, but they're not strangers to the Middle East, and they need that region out there. So it's great to see this region get more localized there. But they still have opportunities with their own language models, Dave. So remember, language models are language. So I think this plays into our narrative around that. So to me, that's a win. And if you look at all the events that we went to this week, they're all bundling in AI. Every single event that we go to has an AI angle onto it. That is breakthrough for them. So every company is, integrating AI into their plans, their product plans. And again, we talked about that bottoms up, top down thing. It's happening. The infrastructure is booming very fast, and everyone's laying down the foundational work to prepare for agents, AI-driven value, value creation, value extraction. New methodologies are coming out. In fact, that was one of the themes that Rob Thomas talked about, is that a new persona is coming out called the value creator. Now, he's got a book around it, but outside of that, the cliche sounding of it is, he's got a good point. In the internet era, remember, if you started a company in the internet, remember, he used to call you an internet entrepreneur. Oh, he's an internet entrepreneur. Why? Because he's using the web. Now, if you're
Got a website,
you got a website, the Globe, and they go public. If you're an AI entrepreneur, I asked Rob this, and I asked others, it's like, what is an AI entrepreneur? If an internet entrepreneur is launching a website or building a search engine or doing something online, what is an AI entrepreneur? And it brings up the question because it is not as easy. So are you consuming AI and becoming an AI entrepreneur there, or are you building AI technology? So it's a interesting question because people have to think, which side am I on? And that's kind of interesting, all the startups as they come out. So that to me means the picks and shovel business will continue to scale for at least a generation. This AI game is where all the action's at, and I think the Middle East points to it. That's the big walkaway for me, outside the political implications of the so-called amazing trip by Trump, is the fact that the AI infrastructure is still on and has a lot more global work to do, but the ongoing ecosystem around it will be massive. I think it's going to be order of magnitudes bigger than we saw in cloud, and I think it's going to be enterprise and cloud, and it's going to be for at least 10 years of run, if not more.
Well, and you're so right. Every event you go to, I was at AWS Financial Services Summit in New York City this week with Scott Mullins, and every customer, I had Prudential on, Truist, talked to ADP, Moody's, Robinhood, Northwestern Mutual, Rocket, Bridgewater. I mean, all these companies, all they were talking about was AI, getting ready for agentic. Now, it's early. Right. I mean, Amazon showed some, reference customers for agentic, it had a handful. If it were mature, there would be like thousands on the logo slide. But nonetheless, that's where all the action is. That's where the enthusiasm is. I still think, there's a long way to go. Most organizations aren't prepared. But, they're starting to deploy these things. And it's going to be interesting, John, to see how they get secured. A lot of the practitioners that I talked to, there were a couple of CIOs and a couple of security folks that I talked to that happened to be there. There were a lot of, that event, you've done it more than I have, but there, a lot of treasury types and, hardcore, financial services types. But there were some CIOs and security folks there, and they're really nervous
Yeah.
about the agents, and the exposure and the security risks associated with them. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
The one thing that comes out of this in Middle East thing is something that kind of highlights what you talked about, what we covered at MWC. I think I wrote a piece about this, a little tiny piece about sovereign clouds on that. But the telco play, if you think about these regions that are going to have all this AI horsepower, what's the impact to telco? Because if you look at the carriers and all the technical people that we talk to, there's an urgent kind of conversation. I got to build a sovereign cloud that runs in my country, and I got to run the workloads in my border. That's more than privacy and data storage. That's like I'm running a workload. So I think this is going to upend data sovereignty and impact companies in the regions. So how do you run on, I guess you can say, on premises to on country? Is there a term for that yet, Dave? It's on country. You have on the cloud, but is it in the country? So this is a whole nother dynamic. And I'm going to start digging into this because VMware Cloud Foundation, I thought was never a non-starter, but we look at VCF coming up. VMware actually could be positioned to be that sovereign cloud piece. Now I know that's a long shot because Amazon's got one, but you think about it, VMware's cutting all their customers except for the big ones. Well, guess what those big companies got to do? They got to do global business. Why not just run the private clouds in these countries? So to me, there's a little bit of a tea leaf reading there, but I bring up VMware. There's other solutions, but what is the sovereign cloud look like? That's a question. I don't know. You got to have the AI scale. Okay, the countries are putting in the data centers, cloud scale AI, great. The data staying on country, onshore, whatever you want to call it. And you got these edge networks, which is the telco. So the telcos will be critical in the sovereign cloud. So that's an observation, and that's kind of a nuanced takeaway from the news because that connects the dots from Mobile World Congress for me and the coverage that you did. I think you had VJ on from Broadcom at that event.
Yep.
And he's a wireless guy, so that kind of tipped my hand a little bit on that. Of course, we cover VMware like it's nobody's business. And I was just at the Nutanix event, and they're basically turning into the next VMware. Their ecosystem is absolutely buzzing, record-breaking vendors. So you got the Nutanix hyper convergence. That's now what? What do you call it now? It's cloud convergence. I mean, they check the box there, but that's all about cloud native. So interesting landscape, Dave. I mean,
that sovereign. I think that sovereign cloud is like a gold rush, and there's such a big opportunity. I think Oracle is a big play there. Obviously, Dell. You mentioned Nutanix, VMware for sure has a role to play there. HPE is going after that. The cloud providers all have designs on that, whether it's local zones or outposts or what Google's doing. Google. There was some little tidbit that Google talked about at Google Next with NVIDIA and Dell. In the context of hybrid cloud, IBM obviously is a big player there as well. I mean, anybody who's got any data center chops is going to be playing there, and the market's huge.
Yeah, and the thing about the edge too, if you think about VJ and Broadcom, and actually NVIDIA's got an analyst briefing I'm going to be attending on telco. I'm going to ask them this question in that session when I sit down with the other analysts at NVIDIA. If you look at the edge, you get the cell towers, the broadband CPEs, the retail kiosks, they all want low latency infrastructure. I think Broadcom's networking chips are interesting here because they can run the lightweight neural network models, right? And so I think this localization piece is going to be huge. Edge, I think, will be the big story in 2026. I think you'll start to see a lot of these regional deployments. You'll start to see high bandwidth capabilities. I think AI networking, some of the new chips that are coming out, will set the table for kind of real AI at the edge, not just computer vision and some of the heavy apps that are out there now. But I think telco next year might be an interesting market. We'll see. But we'll see how that rolls out.
Well, as we know, it moves slowly. 5G never has lived up to the hype and the promises of a few years ago. But telcos, they're basically utilities. They print cash. They actually do a really good job of connectivity. And to your point about sovereign cloud, they bring the fiber in, right? Yeah. And they can build infrastructure. They do that well, the last mile. I mean, so they've got to play, no doubt.
I mean, the theme, Dave, I want to get your thoughts on the tariffs because obviously this is going to impact the tariffs. This big news. We've been saying speed wins, the need for speed. The people who could move fast are going to be here. So the question will be, what's the impact of the tariffs? Because now you have a little bit more kind of like rah kind of money making action going on. What does that do to the tariffs? And who's actually going to win the supply chain game here? Because now remember, there's going to be more gear being shipped all over the place. Um, Supply chain agility, okay, in the face of the U.S. China skirmishes will be very, very interesting to see who can actually manage that well. And that's not easy to do. I mean, think about the impact on the dollar. So, what's your take on that? Because I think that's something that, you know, some of the bigger players have more experience with.
Well, I
So,
think the prevailing wisdom is if you can keep them at, like a 10% hit as opposed to, some of the numbers that have been thrown around. And it does appear it was, all a bunch of, negotiating bluster, but, potentially it's going to work. We'll see. I mean, there's a lot of detail that has to be worked out there, but I think the economy is strong. I think it can absorb that a 10% hit. And people are worried about inflation, but they've been worried about inflation for how many years now?
yeah,
So I think to me it comes back to the debt.
yeah.
You gotta deal with the debt. I mean, successive administrations have just failed to do so, and this one doesn't seem to be
I,
any more interested in attacking it.
I remember when the whole China thing went down, we called it the Cold War. I think
Yep.
we're seeing the Cold War play out because I was talking to some Silicon Valley insiders around the supply chain thing, and what came out of it was the ones that moved there, kind of circumvented the loopholes. Okay, it's going to China or it's being assembled in China, and maybe Vietnam. Vietnam, in some cases, Vietnam was impacted. But the people who could reroute their supply chain fast around, kind of like it's like sneaking through the loopholes, wins, right? So that could make Trump more powerful in the government to use the tariffs as a cudgel to say, hey, Mexico, let's cut a deal. Because some of the people that move from say Vietnam to Mexico, um, like Broadcom and others, that you can get advantages. So there could be a big money swing on the supply chain side. So I think that's an interesting angle, and because if that happens, then Trump would be squeezing China, and that's why I want to watch the Tim Cook Trump battle. And India is a wild card there too. So the tariffs could be a interesting angle, Dave.
Well, I mean, the old Ben Franklin saying, trading partners seldom wage war." So I'm all for trading partners. And look, if we can get things to calm down a little bit, the V-shaped return in the stock market has been remarkable. I was kind of heads down today, so I didn't really see what happened. The market's up yet again, so it was a pretty strong week. You know,
Yeah.
and so we're kind of back to where we started. On Liberation Day. Was it all? The question is, could it have been accomplished without all the stress? And maybe not. Some people say, "Oh, Trump's brilliant." Others will say, "Well, he never really had a plan. He just kind of lucked into it." I don't know. I don't care. I
Is it
just want to
really
see how.
is it really Trump though? Is it, or I mean, he's not the mastermind behind this. I mean, he
Well,
could just
Besant obviously plays a huge role here. I'm really happy that the Navarro camp doesn't appear to be winning because I think that guy's kind of a whack job, and I think Besant is really solid. I mean, every time I listen to the guy, I'm like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing, and he's knows markets. He's very well respected. He's measured, and so I think his voice is winning. Hopefully, anyway, inside the administration. I saw at Trump's breakfast yesterday or last night, whenever it was, that he said, "Scott, why don't you say some things?" And so he obviously respects him. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see, right? And we'll see how real this is. A
yeah.
lot of big numbers being thrown around. The other thing is, like the TSM stuff. He's taken a lot of credit for TSM. That's been going on for years. So it's hard to tell how much is actually new and how much is real. And I think like history will be the
Yeah.
judge. We just don't really know yet. But look, the sentiment is positive. Positive sentiment is a good thing. It's a good thing for the U.S. And so, on balance, I think what happened this week in Saudi Arabia and UAE was good for
Yeah.
the country and good for the industry.
We'll see how it plays out. I agree. I think I like the moves. Um, Next week, Dell Tech World Red Hat Summit. What's the big deal? We got Michael Dell coming on the Cube again. Great to have Michael Dell on. We got JJ Davis. Got a great session, Empowering Business in AI Era. Um, AI Factory is obviously top news. We're going to hear a lot about the AI Factory from Dell, AI Factory around NVIDIA, AI Factory around other systems. And of course, they own the data center. So they are the incumbent in a lot of these big environments, and also just riding the NVIDIA wave. What do you expect from the events next week? Obviously, Red Hat, big part of IBM's growth. We'll see what they got. Um, and just interesting two events. What's your take? What do you
Well, I
expect?
think, I think, look, we always talk about Dell being a founder-led company. We love founder-led companies. It's just something about them. When you look at Dell, you look at Oracle, et cetera. And I think that business is one of the most remarkable and underappreciated stories in tech. It's not sexy, as I talked about this on Breaking Analysis today. It's not like they don't put out an earth-shattering vision where you go, wow, they're going to, change the world. But as Pat Gelsinger said, you got to ride the wave or you become driftwood. Michael Dell's figured out how to ride the wave, over and over and over. Even though they've made some, mistakes, they were never fatal when they tried to get into the enterprise and, buy all those enterprise companies, hardware, software, et cetera. And the EMC just transformed everything. So I said in my Breaking Analysis that like Hyman Roth, remember Hyman Roth in The Godfather?
Yeah,
Michael Dell always seems to make money for his partners, but unlike Hyman Roth, Michael Dell is not a gangster. He's a
yeah,
gentleman. That he wrote the book on playing nice and winning, and so I expect we're going to see is, like you said, AI Factory. I think the big
yeah,
thing I'm looking for is more systems, more tooling, more software.
yeah.
I think, as we've talked about a lot, every layer of the stack is changing. Dell has to completely refactor its entire portfolio for AI, while at the same time, servicing its install base, which
Yeah.
moves at the pace of a CIO. And so you're going to see that sort of dual mandate play out.
I think Michael Dell doesn't is so powerful because he makes money for his partners. I love the Godfather reference. Yeah, some would call him a gangster in tech, because he's the original gangster, right?
He's
So
OG,
he's
but a
an
good,
OG.
good G.
Um,
Yeah.
he's no, he's always makes the transitions, and I think this one, I like what they're doing. I like the team. You got John Rose, who has really got his finger on the pulse. Ehab, you got Varun over there. He's got it going on. JJ Davis has got the vision on the marketing side. She understands where the value extraction is going to be and how that business is going to transform. Sam Grocott, all people we've been worked with over the
Jeff
years.
Jeff Clark is humming
Yeah,
along. He seems as energized
yeah,
as ever. The new CFO, Yvonne McGill, seems to be picking right up from where Tom Sweet left
yeah.
off. I mean,
Gil Shearson,
so
he's got the telco angle too. You got Caitlin Gordon. These are all just we've talked with, been following their careers. I got to tell you, it's not like they're mailing it in. They get it. And I think if you look at what Dell's doing with AI factories, they're playing their bets in a very clever way. NVIDIA is on one hand, and they got everyone else on the other, and the market still hasn't evolved yet. It's evolving very, very fast. So I think the time is on their side for a very short window for Dell. I think Dell could really play this out beautifully and make sales pop, because once the enterprises open up the floodgates for AI factories, as these kind of edge features come together too next year, I think the next 5 years is going to be a complete renaissance of what a data center looks like. And like NVIDIA says, or what Charlie Kawaz at Broadcom would say, the data center is the supercomputer, right? So like the data center is the computer. And if you have to talk to John Rose, the CTO, now the AI czar at Dell, he says the same thing. Don't get hung up on the Rex and all the old thinking. The mindset shift to the data center is the power envelope. That is the computer. Just think of it that way. And and you think about it that way, you go, well, it makes sense. How many servers do we have? What's the interconnect look like? Ethernet, et cetera, et cetera. If that happens, and that's the next 5 to 10 year run, the numbers and the refresh cycle, Dave, will just be incredible. I mean, just do the math on the data center TAM. I think you called it $1 trillion TAM.
yeah,
That
it's a
will
trillion
trans.
dollars around the end of the decade. And by the way, the data center business was a perpetual $200 billion business forever. Growing a little bit, shrinking a little bit, and then all of a sudden it exploded. I mean, it grew 50% in one year. It's got a 15 to 20% CAGR.
Yeah.
over the next 10 years. I mean, it's just exploding. And I call it a super cycle. Some people don't like that term, but
I love
folks,
that term.
we're in a data center super cycle.
Why don't people like that term?
They think it like super cloud. They think it's hype, right? I mean,
Uh,
they,
it, what's a tsunami? It's a big wave, right? They have to call it something, right? I mean, like, this is. I mean, a super cycle. To me, though, that the TAM numbers that you're scoping, just think about the magnitude of refresh and retransformation of actually how the systems are deployed and operated. Just a mind-blowing thought exercise. That means everything that we know in the data center is going to be flipped upside down. The
totally.
notion of rack and stack. Okay, I was talking to someone like, yeah, we have a rack and the power envelope. Well, you don't need to put everything in one rack. It's a set data center. What's the total? So again, people who are thinking differently are winning faster. So again, I keep on speaking. The speed game is critical to me. I think the people who are winning right now are the ones who are fast. NVIDIA's running hard. Broadcom's running hard and fast. Dell's
Cloud
running
guys are
hard and
running
fast.
hard. Yeah, all right. I mean, cloud guys are moving at light speed. This is
Yeah.
amazing. And yeah, if you're not moving fast, you're going to be crushed. You're going to be driftwood, as Pat would say. um,
Well,
so, what else?
yeah, that
Intel. We haven't really talked much about it, but I think I mentioned on an earlier CubePod. I actually think they've got a viable strategy now. I'm going to dig into that with Floyer and report on it. They still, I mean, they feel like they really missed AI, but I still think they can retrench and be profitable. And as we talked about, unfortunately, we're not going to have a world-class foundry.
mhm.
Um, for advanced manufacturing that is U.S. headquartered company.
Yeah.
But I think Intel has now got a viable strategy. I think they've got to now regroup. And I'm going to dig in and report more. But my initial take is I'm actually pretty impressed with the new CEO.
Well, Dave, we gotta make it short. It's been super. Only 2 days this month. I'm in the office today and next Friday. But
I
I
think
had
I'm
a
out
great.
next Friday. I think I'm out next Friday. Can we do the Cube Pod at Dell Tech World, maybe?
Yeah, we can do that. I mean,
Let's do that.
I'm gonna be, just getting ready to rock and roll out for, um, next week. Just getting ready
Are you
for.
there the whole week at DTW?
Yeah, I'm there. Yeah, I'm leaving.
So Wednesday, let's do Cube Pod Wednesday.
We got Commerce Tools, by the way, another new event. We've got the commerce action going on. We're going to have, all these Money 2020 retail. You're going to start to see FinTech TV and theCUBE do some stuff together. So shout out to the FinTech TV team, Vince Molinari there and Troy, awesome group. I was really excited by the Click event I was at. I got to say, I've given them a plug. Click, um, Connect. Boy, their real-time answers product is really good. They got the cloud. So watch Click, Dave. They're old school. We've been following all those players since the early Hadoop days.
I like Click,
I,
and I
I
FICO too. FICO World was. I wanted to do that show, but I was it was elsewhere. So
Savannah was at Boomy World with Paul Nashwati. That went great. Cerebras, I
and
went down.
NetApp too. The NetApp show
I
was. I
forgot about
heard
NetApp.
great.
I
I
forgot
was
about
talking to
NetApp.
Rob Strechay today. He said it was unbelievable. He said they're doing all the right
Yeah.
things. There's another company that's ridden every wave, right? The cloud was going to kill them. Virtualization was going to kill them. I mean, they started as a workstation company, a
Yeah.
workstation storage company. But yeah,
Well, we'll see you at Dell Tech World. I'm arriving in on Sunday. I'll be there early. I'll see you at the analyst kickoff. When I love how Dell brings all the analysts in there together. So it's great to get in there with the analysts and do the analyst thing. So, Dave, we'll see you in Vegas and
all right, John. We'll see you
abridged
and see
version.
everybody else. Hey, if folks, if you're there, stop by. Dell puts us in the best location. We're right in the center of the action. We build out a great set. So awesome support. All the execs are coming on. The partners. It's actually this is what our 15th year at Dell Tech World / EMC World. It started in
Yeah.
Boston in 2010.
Yeah, and it looks like we're going to be at VMware Explore. That makes VMware the longest consecutive, but because EMC and Dell merged, so that
Right.
if you count that as one, it's still two shows left that have been with us from the beginning. And in
You
fact,
could make a case that something changed at VMware too, but maybe not.
I interviewed someone at Click, and I'm like, remember Sapphire? You were the Sapphire in 2011, and that was the year we had the close-up shots. Remember? And we both looked at each other. We looked at I pulled it up on our video cloud. I look at the video, and we laughed. We got a good chuckle.
I loved Sapphire. We
Yeah.
did Sapphire for years. We haven't done it in a while, but
Yeah.
just so busy.
Well, we
All
got
right,
so many
John.
events. We'll see you later, everyone.
See you out
See you
there.
next
Thanks,
time.
everybody.